I think I can say, without receiving too much criticism, that the world has gone kind of crazy of late. But thinking about it, it's always been kind of crazy, I suppose. Only now we have global communications reporting and informing us of events around the world which emphasize that the insanity is basically everywhere. We see it in real time on our TVs and in the newspapers. Yes, things have always been this way, even during my safe time, which basically was the 60s when I was growing up as a kid. I say it was my safe time because of my innocence. In other words, my lack of understanding of the consequences of world and local events. Also, as kids, we felt safe playing on the hills and in the valleys of South Wales, even late into the evening. Those were good and safe times, locally that is. But even then, there was the nuclear threat, made very real by the 1962 Cuban crisis. I was barely aware of it, though I heard it on the TV. I was just 6 years old, but wasn't awake, obviously, to the potential danger to humanity posed by these events. I was just young and carefree. So this world has always had existential threats for our species, because we are a violent species. But having said that, I do think that things are escalating, especially with regard to the massive instability among the populations of various countries. And you only need to watch the news to see the truth of that. So the question is, why is this? Why is the world this way? And the answer, I think, is both complex and simple. Now, in previous episodes, I have looked at the theory that this world we live on is nothing more than a prison, both from the perspective of Gnosticism and the idea that there is in place advanced technology put there by malevolent ETs to keep us trapped here in order to control us. And this latter theory is pushed out, among others, by David Icke, who I think has an excellent grasp on things, and the Farsight Institute, a remote viewing group who have done a number of projects looking at this possibility. For example, their project called The Death Traps. Now, I'll leave a link to the trailer they have on YouTube in the description, and you can make up your own mind what you think of it. So however you look at it, no matter what we do, this theory says we're trapped in cycles of suffering, manipulation, and even reincarnation itself. And it's a compelling idea, and one that's gained traction in spiritual and alternative circles. And it's one that I advocated for, and in a way still do. But, and here's a different way of looking at it. What if the prison is real only in the way we perceive it? And what if something like A Course in Miracles shows us that the prison walls can vanish with a shift in perception? Because that's what ACIM teaches is a miracle, a perceptual shift. And I like to compare this to an expanded consciousness. And we do know that there are parasitic entities who wish to control our perceptions, and probably for this very reason, to keep us trapped. The Gnostics call them archons, the Farsight Institute, bad ETs. But however you frame it, the control is real within this reality, be it a simulation or something else. And that's what we're diving into today. The prison planet hypothesis, the teachings of ACIM, and how they may not at all be at odds with each other. But in fact, they might be different languages pointing to the same doorway to freedom. I'm the Grumpy Grandpa. Let's set the stage. The prison planet hypothesis suggests that Earth, or perhaps this dimension itself, is a kind of soul trap, a place designed to keep us looping in cycles of ignorance, suffering, and control. Now, whether you frame it through Gnosticism's archons, the reincarnation trap theory, or just the everyday systems of power we see in politics and society controlled by a cabal, digital IDs, facial recognition, surveillance of the various kinds. Big Brother is watching. The feeling is the same. We're stuck. And if you're anything like me, you feel that the planetary energetics have shifted considerably in the past few years with all that has happened and is happening in the world, wherever you are. Now contrast that with A Course in Miracles, or ACIM, which we looked at in the last episode. Now you need to watch that video to get the context here. ACIM is less concerned with the outer mechanics of the universe and far more with the mind's perception. And this aligns perfectly with what David Icke talks about when it comes to perception. What is ACIM's core claim then? We are never trapped by the world itself, only by the way we see it. A miracle in ACIM's language is a correction of perception. It's a moment where fear and guilt are replaced with love and clarity. Forgiveness too, as we saw the last time, isn't about excusing behavior. It's about undoing the mind's interpretation that makes us suffer. So one framework says you're trapped in a prison. The other says you're trapped in your mind's misconceptions. Now on the surface, they might sound like they cancel each other out. But let's see if they actually complete each other instead. Now here's the bridge that connects these two ideas. According to ACIM, the ego, that nagging voice of presumed separation, fear, and guilt within, creates the perception of prison. It projects a world that seems hostile, limited, and inescapable. It says, you're stuck, you're powerless, the walls are real. But what if the prison planet is the ego's projection, just writ large? What if the very belief in a soul trap is itself a trap, a clever trick of the ego to keep us invested in fear and separation? A separation we have seen in previous episodes doesn't exist. Seen this way, the prison is real enough because perception is reality for the perceiver. But the key is perception can change, or the consciousness can expand. That's where ACIM's miracle comes in. The moment we choose to see differently, to expand our consciousness, the walls shift or sometimes disappear altogether, and the trap loses its grip. So how does a shift in perception work? Imagine you're in a situation where life feels oppressive. Maybe you've lost a job, or you're watching the news and feeling swallowed by corruption and chaos. Now that's not difficult these days, is it? From the ego's point of view, you're stuck. You're small and powerless. That's the prison. But ACIM invites us to pause, to notice that interpretation, and to say, I could be wrong about this. That tiny act of questioning loosens the ego's hold. It cracks the wall, so to speak. Then comes forgiveness, not of the situation itself, but of the interpretation that changed you in the first place. You begin to see the possibility that love and peace could exist here too. That's the miracle. And in that moment, the prison isn't destroyed from the outside. It dissolves from the inside out. Now, I know from experience that a change in perception can change everything. Your whole outlook moves. There is a shift in reality. I've seen it myself, so I know it's true. Now, I'm not saying that just this one shift will dissolve the prison, but it is the first step on the journey to enlightenment. The kind that shifts your vibration so that you are no longer trapped within this low vibrational dimension. That's how the prison bars dissolve. Now let's do a quick practice together. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a slow breath in and out. And bring to mind a thought that makes you feel trapped, something that feels like a wall in your life. Now don't push it away, just notice it. Now say silently, I could be wrong about this. Notice the shift, however subtle. Maybe a tiny space opens up. It might not be much at first, but it's there. Now say, I'm willing to see differently. Then see it from another perspective. Now that's all it takes to begin. You start slowly and build on it. It all becomes a practice. This is what ACIM means by a miracle. Not lightning bolts, but simple shifts in how we see things. Now let's address the difficult stuff. Objection number 1. Doesn't this deny real suffering? No. ACIM doesn't deny pain or injustice. What it says is that our interpretation of suffering compounds the pain. By shifting perception, we meet this reality from clarity and love, which makes our actions wiser and more effective. And the frequency begins to rise. Objection number 2. What about systemic oppression, wars, inequality, having to deal with low IQ politicians on a daily basis and the repercussions of their stupidity? Again, this is easy to see on our TVs every single day. Changing perception doesn't mean ignoring these things. It means approaching them without the ego's rage and despair. That doesn't make us passive. It actually makes us more powerful because we no longer react from a position of fear. Remember, fear is a common political tactic. But when we have no more reaction to it, we become someone who politicians fear instead. We become the feared. They become the terrified. Our frequency rises even more. Objection number 3. Isn't this just positive thinking? Not at all. ACIM's forgiveness goes deeper than just optimism. It's about releasing false beliefs and opening up to truth. It's not sugarcoating reality. It's correcting the lens we're looking through. And we all have our particular lenses. Think of the ego like a projector. The ego projects a movie on the wall, a movie of traps, prisons, and hopelessness. But the film reel is inside the projector, not on the wall. Shift the reel, and the movie changes. In other words, the egoic mind functions as a kind of inner projector that casts our beliefs and fears outward onto the screen of the world. So the projector itself is the ego, the part of the mind that believes in separation, guilt, and fear. The film reel is our beliefs and interpretations. The light beam is our attention or consciousness that animates these beliefs. The movie on the wall is our experienced world, the things we think are happening to us. So what I mean by this metaphor is that the cause of our suffering isn't out there in the events themselves. It's in here, the thoughts and beliefs that color how we perceive them. Change the inner lens, and the same world scene can suddenly feel peaceful instead of punishing, and our frequency rises still further. Or picture a dream. In the dream, the prison is terrifying, but when we wake up, the prison disappears. ACIM is essentially a practice in waking up. Now, I'm not saying that a single shift in perception is all that it takes. This is a path, after all. The world might still look the same, but your relation to it is transformed. And that's the freedom. So what does this mean for you and me right now? If you resonate with the prison planet hypothesis, take it seriously. Don't dismiss it. But ask, is the prison out there, or is it in here, in how I perceive? ACIM gives us tools, forgiveness, miracles, willingness to test it for ourselves, not by debate, but by experience. And when you experience even a moment of freedom, you'll see that the prison isn't absolute. It's actually fragile. It depends on your belief. Withdraw that belief, and the walls crumble. And the controllers are terrified because they know how powerful we really are. That's why they want to control perception, to keep us from realizing it. And this brings me to a crucial point in our discussion. I have said in previous episodes that it's not where you're at, it's what you believe that counts. Enter Robert Monroe. Now, this is a voice we cannot leave out of the discussion. Robert Monroe is the founder of the Monroe Institute and one of the 20th century pioneers of out-of-body exploration. Starting in the 1950s, Monroe began having spontaneous experiences where his awareness separated from his physical body. And curious rather than fearful, he spent decades documenting these journeys and developing audio frequency tools to help others reach similar expanded states. He wrote 3 books: Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journeys, and Ultimate Journey, each a deeper map of consciousness beyond the physical. And what he discovered ties directly into what ACIM teaches about perception. What he tells us is that belief creates experience. In his travels, Monroe found that the non-physical realms weren't uniform. He encountered vast belief system territories, environments shaped entirely by the convictions of those who inhabited them. Christians found themselves in Christian-style heavens. Warlike souls entered endless battlefields. Skeptics drifted in grey, foggy spaces, convinced nothing exists beyond matter. His realization was profound. After death, you don't meet truth first. You meet your beliefs. In other words, belief acts as the frequency dial of consciousness. Change the belief, and the entire landscape shifts. You literally move to another reality frame. ACIM expresses the same law in psychological language. You see what you believe is there, and you believe it because you see it. That's the ego's circular trap. Belief creates perception, and perception confirms the belief. So whether you're in a physical body or beyond it, mind precedes form. Remember that. Change the mind, and the world reorganizes. The miracle, once again, is that instant of recognition. I am not the prisoner of the world I see. The main takeaway? Belief shapes experience. The prison, the afterlife territory, the ego's world. These are all belief constructions. They appear solid only as long as we subscribe to them. So let's re-examine the prison planet through this lens. Maybe the bars are not steel or force fields. They're beliefs. Collective thought forms built from fear, guilt, and the idea of separation. And as long as humanity believes in punishment and scarcity, we will co-create systems that mirror them. But when those beliefs shift, when love and unity become our organizing principles, the outer world has no choice but to follow suit. That's how the prison dissolves, not by a cosmic jailbreak, so to speak, but by a mass change of mind. So perhaps the real spiritual work isn't escaping the planet, it's examining belief. Robert Monroe learned that when we shed a limiting belief, we move to a freer state of consciousness. A Course in Miracles says exactly the same. When we forgive a false perception, you return to peace. Both are describing liberation. One through exploration, the other through correction. If belief shapes what we see, here or beyond, then the most radical act of freedom is to look at what we believe. Because the moment we question a fear-based belief, we've already stepped outside its field. And maybe that's what both Monroe and ACIM have been telling us all along. The real prison isn't Earth, it's unquestioned belief. And the real escape is expanded awareness. So whether we speak of prison planets, ego projections, or belief system territories, the principle is timeless. Mind makes worlds. And when mind changes, worlds change. The miracle, the ACIM kind, is simply that shift of perception where we realize the walls were made of thought all along. So the next time you feel trapped by the world, by fear, or by circumstance, pause and murmur, I could be wrong about this, and I'm willing to see differently. That's the first step. That's the key turning in the lock. That's when the miracle arrives. And that's when the prison begins to fade. Because ultimately, belief builds worlds and awareness dissolves them. Just choose again. So maybe the prison planet hypothesis and ACIM aren't enemies at all. Maybe they're two halves of the same insight. One names the experience. It feels like we're trapped. The other gives the solution. Perception can undo the trap. And if that's true, and I'm sure it is, then the prison planet isn't the final word on reality. It's just the ego's story. And stories can change. I remember watching a Far Side video where the viewers looked to see if anyone had escaped the death traps. And they did see where someone had escaped. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher who legend says was the author of the Tao Te Ching. Tao or Tao really is the same word, just written differently depending on the system used to represent Chinese sounds. That is the map to freedom. So basically, Lao Tzu, changing the way he saw reality, was able to escape the trap. He moved on to a higher dimension. The Tao, which literally means the path, is a blueprint for escape. So here's the invitation. The next time you feel trapped by the world, by your mind, by fear, pause and say to yourself, I'm wrong about this. I am going to see differently. Then watch what happens. Because that's when the miracle comes. That's when the prison starts to vanish. So whether the trap is cosmic or psychological, external or internal, the key remains the same. A shift in perception. And when perception shifts, we discover something radical. The prison planet never was as solid as it seemed. We will take a look at the Tao Te Ching in the next episode. Until then.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the Grumpy Old Buggers channel, so I can get some peace and quiet.